Hi folks, it's the Storage Unit Chronicles again. Here we are back with some new boxes to show you. These are the boxes, of course, that we had talked about once before, where I had just shown you the outside labels, and now we're getting into more of the boxes of what's inside. So let's have a closer look. This box is labeled S to X, so this covers quite a bit of the alphabet, so we'll see what goodies are in here. This is Secret Society of Supervillains. This was a series that came out in the 70s, and I'm not entirely sure what the point was, but it did feature some prominent DC characters. This is Black Canary, and there's, of course, Superman, Hawkgirl up here. So they had a bunch of characters. Maybe that was the point, is that they have characters that you don't see all the time. This is Gorilla Grodd, who's a villain of The Flash. And there's this secrets. There's the Crime Syndicate, so that's a good one. There's Reverse Flash. So, and here's a good one. This is Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars #1, which unfortunately is really not in very good shape, but still an interesting issue. Definitely noteworthy, because I believe Marvel is planning to have a Secret Wars movie coming out after the Doctor Doom movie, so we're talking 2 or 3 years from now, but still. And here's Sentry. I think that Marvel might have some plans for Sentry as well, so we'll see. And Marvel, of course, is wise enough to put Spider-Man in some Sentry issues, always trying to figure out ways to get characters in, ingratiating him inside the Marvel Universe. This is a new series of Sentry with art by John Romita Jr., a fan favorite, of course. And there's plenty of that. This is a miniseries 1 to 8. And here's Shade the Changing Man, which was an original series by Steve Ditko when he did some work for DC in the 70s. This was after, of course, his tenure with Marvel as the co-creator of Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. So he did some stuff for DC. And this is the relaunch series of Shade the Changing Man by Peter Milligan and Chris Bachalo. I think that's how his name is pronounced, which was really interesting. This came out about the same time as Sandman, and for my money, it was always... when I would buy my new books, it was always either Shade or Sandman that I would read first out of the stack. And Shade was often at least just every bit as good as Sandman. Sandman was probably a little better, but Shade was still very good. So, and there's the first 3 issues of that. Here's the Shang-Chi series that came out in, I think this was early 2000s, maybe late 2000s, 2010. And these are variant covers. And here's Power of Shazam, which was a 90s relaunch of, I think it was either late 80s or early 90s relaunch of Power of Shazam. The highlight, of course, is Jerry Ordway. He's a great writer, creator that DC had. And of course, you know, if you're interested in Shazam, always worth checking out. Here's Spawn. These are post 300 issues of Spawn. We went over a Spawn box once before, and I don't know if I got to the 300s in that box. So here's some newer issues of Spawn. That's 310, as I said. This one's 315. So this, I have a bunch of these. This is 337. There's 338, 339. So that's Spawn. This is 341. And as you can see, there's a bunch of Spawns here. This one is 348. That's the last one. I think I have some newer ones elsewhere, so that's definitely something that if you were interested, definitely hit me up and ask, and I'll tell you what I got. If you tell me what you need, we'll make a deal. This is the Spider-Man series, the adjective-free Spider-Man series, as opposed to Amazing Spider-Man or Spectacular Spider-Man or Web of Spider-Man or Sensational Spider-Man or Ultimate Spider-Man or whatever. This one is just Spider-Man. This one was originally launched with Todd McFarlane as the writer-artist, and then, of course, he only did about 15 issues before he moved on to other things, and then others had to take over. So this is later in the series. This is issue 55, and this is issue 57. So this is 58. So there's a bunch in a row there. This is yet another adjectiveless Spider-Man, although technically I suppose it's the Marvel Knights Spider-Man by Mark Millar, with great art by Terry Dodson, as you can see on the cover. And there's Mark Millar with Frank Cho as the artist, and a great cover by Frank Cho as well. There's more Frank Cho stuff. This is Terry Dodson is back. So yeah, I have a couple of issues of that. That's 12. That's with the Green Goblin and Terry Dodson again. And this is Reginald Hudlin on the writing, is with Billy Tan as the artist. And this is the Other series, Evolve or Die. That's J. Michael Straczynski as the writer. Great stuff. Reginald Hudlin's back with that one. Now here's some Spider-Man miniseries. This is Amazing Spider-Man King in Black, #1. It's about Null, I believe, who's the Venom Overlord or whatever that is. To be honest, I'm not terribly familiar. This is Spider-Man War of the Realms, #2 and #3. Here's one of the aforementioned sensational. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned that one, but this is Sensational Spider-Man. I think this is #6. Yep, I think it's #6. So here's a few more issues of Sensational Spider-Man. There's Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin. Sensational Spider-Man, that's Craven. He had his own movie, of course. Here's a newer version of Sensational. I guess that might be the newer series of Sensational Spider-Man. So this is issue 29. So this is a relaunched one by Roberto Aguirre Sacasca, I think is how that's pronounced, or Sacasa. And he I think he relaunched the updated Archie series. So in addition to that, he also did some Sensational Spider-Man. Here's Symbiote Spider-Man by Peter David, who I've mentioned before is one of my favorite writers. So again, I will state that anything that he does is always worth getting. That's #1. That's #2. Here's a Symbiote Spider-Man King in Black, again by Peter David. That's a Captain Marvel cover. There's more of that. Here's Spider-Woman and Star Hunters, but I only have one of each of those, and that one's not in great shape. That one looks good, but that's a 70s series. Now here's Starman. This is another one that's really fantastic. This is another one that came out in the 90s by James Robinson. This is an excellent series, and I would highly recommend Starman. Every issue from 1 to 80 was definitely worth reading. This is also kind of unique in that DC had these 0 issues that came out in the 90s. This is one of the few series that actually started with the 0 issue. So most of them just kind of had a 0 issue in the middle of a run. So it would be 200 and then 0, then 201. So it was kind of weird, but this one actually started with its 0 issue. At least I think it was this one. So there's #1. As I said, this series, I cannot recommend it highly enough. It was really a really good series. So that's #5. Here's an annual Starman. It's funny, I'm going to say this a lot in this box, but Swamp Thing. These are Swamp Thing issues by Alan Moore. And again, I cannot recommend Alan Moore Swamp Thing highly enough. This issue was two issues after John Constantine was introduced. Some people will say Constantine, but I believe that Americans say Constantine and British people say Constantine. But anyway, this is 2 issues after he was introduced, so unfortunately I don't have the first appearance of his, but this is an issue that's right there in the middle of the Alan Moore run, and of course it's excellent. This is I could go on, but these are Alan Moore stories. This issue was inspired by the Winchester House in California. And it's got a great story inside that talks about the history of the house and the legend and all that. If you're familiar with the story, this comic book is a great companion piece. And this is Swamp Thing delved into the Crisis crossover, but dealt with the more obscure and occult characters that did not get directly affected by this Crisis. And here, of course, is later issues of Swamp Thing. This is Abby is getting arrested for her relationship with Swamp Thing, which was a very interesting storyline, and eventually featured Batman coming in. And then these issues dealt with Swamp Thing having been banished from Earth by Lex Luthor, a great storyline. And of course, eventually he managed to find his way back to Earth, and then he has all these battles off Earth and eventually makes his way back. And then, of course, unfortunately, Alan Moore left the series, which is really a shame, but I do have quite a few of the Alan Moore issues, and again, would highly recommend them. So here's some older Thors. These are 70s and 80s issues before Walt Simonson took over. And of course, now here are the Walt Simonson issues, which a lot of the Walt Simonson issues, I think, inspired some of the events that happened in the Thor movies. But these are some of them. That, of course, is Beta Ray Bill. Not his first appearance, because that was the first issue of Simonson's run, which was 337. Then that's 358. Here is Thor being turned into a frog, which as you might remember, was referenced in passing in the Ragnarok movie. And Loki said, "Oh, that was hilarious. This is the story he was talking about." So, anyway, here's a newer version of Thor with Jane Foster with the Thor guys. There's some more of those issues, and there's one issue of Ultimate Spider-Man number 8, Untold Legend. Here's a really underrated Spider-Man series, Untold Tales of Spider-Man. These were tales of Spider-Man back when he was in high school, when he first got started, and these were just stories that fit into the first 25 or so issues of The Amazing Spider-Man, and they're by Kurt Busiek. So he's another good writer and really was paying attention, and even gave, I think, notes as to where they fit within the issues. So that was a fun series of Spider-Man. And then there's Wonder Woman. These 70s issues of Wonder Woman are kind of rare, or not kind of rare, but they're kind of hard to find. So you know, these are a couple of those. This was a Whitman issue, which is a kind of a variant, so I put the number and tape 251 because the Whitman issues didn't have the numbers on the cover. But as you can see, that logo, that means it was distributed by the Whitman Company. I think they made toys. And so if you saw those, sometimes they can be a little bit more valuable than the regular issue. And of course, these are newer issues. Here's Word of Krypton. Here's some of the World's Finest. I have more of those elsewhere. And then these are just various ones and the box. So that's it for that one. And you know, if any of those issues catch your eye, or if you're watching this video and want to know more, by all means, please ask a question, leave a comment, or contact me via eBay Messenger. And let's see if we can make a deal. Thanks a lot, and have a good evening.